Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Big Nickel IDP podcast. I am your host, Jon Macri, PFF's IDP specialist and data analyst. Last episode, we were buying and selling IDPs from the AFC, and now we continue our wheeling and dealing ways into the NFC with some interesting names to consider, even though we're bees deep into NFL free agency already. Those opportunity windows are closing fast, so without wasting any more time, let's get it. All right. We've seen a ton of movement already in the NFL with key IDP names signing with new teams, getting released, and even traded. And there's still plenty more to come, obviously, in the next couple of weeks, as we're still in the very early stages of the offseason, making it not too late to get in on some potential buy low or sell high candidates. And specifically for this episode, like I said, we turn our attention to those in the NFC. If you've been listening to the IDP show over the past year, you will be familiar with my guest today, also a contributor at Reality Sports Online. He is the great Jake Kohlhagen. Jake, what's happening, my man?
This guy over here. Oh, no, man. Like I told you before, I am not great. If anything, the NFC is perfect for me because it means no freaking clue. I got no freaking clue what we're doing here with all these moves and everything. But I live for it. It's awesome. I've got lots of thoughts here. Love to talk through them. I'm excited to do it with you, good sir, Mr. Macri, the PFF Macri, who I was telling him before the show. This is the guy who got me stoked and pumped into producing content in the IDP space. So this is a thing where they say don't meet your heroes, but I'm pretty pumped, and I've been pretty satisfied meeting my hero so far. So.
Oh my God. But between you and Evan, I don't know, man. My head's gonna be so big at this point. Like the next piece of decor on my wall is gonna be shrapnel from my skull and my brain. My head's gonna be so big it's just gonna explode at some point with how nice you guys would to be. I don't deserve your kindness, but
we could get a literal fat head of you at some point. Remember fat heads, like when that was a thing? Like, so we'll get a Macri fat head and it will be literal and metaphorical all in one. So
oh man, wouldn't that be terrifying for my family to have to look at? Yeah, man. But no, I appreciate the kind words. It's shocking to me, to be honest, that I have any kind of impact on anybody that is doing IDP content for sure, because I'm still fairly new at like producing content for IDP as well. I think I've only been doing it, I don't know, maybe 3 years now. I've been playing IDP for a lot longer, and doing content for myself basically, and pulling rankings and data and stuff like that just for me. But to actually get to share it with people in public is been still fairly new, relatively new, at least for the past 3 years. So it's very cool to hear, Jake, but you yourself are doing great work, and I'm very happy to have you here.
Likewise. I love it. So what do we got today though?
Man, we got a lot. We got there's a lot of names to go through. Obviously, a lot's been changing here with free agency. It's been pretty wild for IDP, obviously, because man, linebackers seem to be the hottest commodity right now, just with how many guys have been signed in the last 3 days since Monday. Today's Wednesday, and just names keep coming off the board. Big names, a lot of shifting landscape in the IDP world. It's pretty exciting. It gives us a lot to talk about. Obviously, I know the offensive fantasy guys weren't as excited with free agency, but man, we're digging every minute of this. So yeah, you've been enjoying free agency. You got any favorite signings so far?
I would say my favorite has been the lack of a signing, actually. So I'm a Houston guy, and from the team's sake, they probably could have used the linebacker signing,
right?
But I know, and Josh and Bobby and Addie have talked about this in a couple of their episodes. Everyone's projecting Houston to grab this linebacker, and I've been gobbling up all these Christian Harris shares left and right, thinking I'm thinking he's the guy, and not because he's a talent, but sometimes volume is king, and a guy is a guy for IDP, and it's been coming through strong for a lot of my fantasy rosters at this point in terms of the lack of that signing. But another one, I really sneakily, I know it's not in on the NFC side for us today, but
No, that's
Azeez
okay.
Al-Shaair, man, I'm actually really interested to see what he does on that defense, where that single linebacker, that lead linebacker, has been relatively productive. And Shaair has shown that he can kind of play that 3-down role pretty strong or consistently from the Niners when injuries have occurred. And I think he's going to be sneaky, like high-end LB2, maybe pushing LB1 range this year for a lot of people. And it might be a name that not a lot of people are really in on. So I'm excited to see what comes of that one. So
yeah, he's a fun one, and it's a great landing spot, right? Like the rest of the guys that are there between Monty Rice and Jack Gibbons, and I think they signed Luke Gifford. Like there's really nobody, right? So it's a prime spot for any of the linebackers, and he's kind of the he's the obviously the beneficiary there. We'll see what happens with Monty Rice. How much they like him, but I know Vrabel ran a lot of dime last year as well, right? So it was essentially one linebacker that was relevant consistently for the entire season. So we'll see how things look this year. But yeah, man, I'm with you. I like these all year.
What about you? What's got Macri all excited in the last 3 days?
Favorite one, man, I love the Javon Hargrave to San Francisco. That was really nice. I love Hargrave. I love those like interior guys that can rush the passer, and so Hargrave's been a fun one for me to watch the last couple of years, and it's going to be, I think, exciting for him on the San Francisco D line, because man, he's just so good. Even at like 30 years old, look, it's old for the NFL, but let's make things very clear. It's 30 is not old. Okay, we're gonna,
especially not on the defensive line. Like you see people produce very well from IDP and NFL standpoint, well into their late 20s, early 30s. So
yeah, so that's an exciting one, and I think he signed a 4-year deal.
4-year 84, I think was the big number, right? I mean,
that's a big contract, and man, he deserved it. There aren't many players that are as dominant as a pass rusher from the interior as he is. So that's a nice fit for them, and I think he'll continue to be great in San Francisco. That's the one that I think I like the most.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that pass rush stay strong, because it's a super fun one to watch on a Sunday afternoon, as well as for IDP purposes between him and Bosa. And even when they had Ebukam there, like they always found a way to deliver with these guys. Menahu, when he came over from Houston, was a somewhat relevant pass rusher there too. So and Steve Wilkes will keep, I think, that train rolling. That defense will be very, very relevant here this offseason, or this next season. So
for sure. Yeah, they've always done a good job at like developing their defensive linemen and getting the most out of them, basically. So I know Ebukam and Omenihu are gone in free agency, but now they got Drake Jackson coming up. But man, Javon Kinlaw still hasn't really reached that potential yet, but still fairly early in his career. We'll see what happens there. But obviously Hargrave will be the top dog in the interior there. But
right.
Yeah, man. It's exciting stuff. There's so many IDP free agents that we could talk about. We'll probably touch on a few as we go through it, but the guys covered it on Monday in their episode, the IDP show.
Yes.
If people haven't listened to that, definitely go check it out. They cover over 20 free agent IDPs. So they did a really good job covering all that stuff already for you. And for us, what we're doing is we're buying and selling now. Obviously, if people listened last week, we kind of went over this in regards to what buying and selling means, to me at least, but every league is different, and each player is going to be valued differently depending on the league and the current manager for every player. But getting a return or moving on from players or picks that you are comfortable with, I think, is the key here. If you like the reasoning that we lay out for these guys, or when you're drafting in startups, maybe picking them up a bit earlier than expected in drafts to ensure that you get the guy that you like, or paying slightly more in your league's free agency, whatever it happens to be. There could be a number of meanings behind buy, sell, well, target avoid, whatever. So we'll get into it. Jake, I'll let you kick us off here in the NFC South with your favorite targets from the team with the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft, the Carolina Panthers.
Right. And I think it was perfect. You talked about Javon Kinlaw, this a young defensive tackle who maybe will they break out. And I want to take a look at a young defensive tackle who I felt like maybe finally did sort of break out a bit last year in Derrick Brown. And I want to buy Derrick Brown this year. And the biggest reasons why, what he did last year with a defense that's still growing and evolving and kind of reaching its peak. He put up some really, really stellar numbers for career highs, right? So snaps, 878th among all defensive tackles in the NFL. Always talk about snaps as king. Snaps is that foundational piece. So if you can get especially an interior defender taking that many snaps, I mean, that is a huge stepping stone in the right direction for him to deliver for us for IDP. Pressures, 40, 19th. Overall, quarterback hits 10th, 13th overall among defensive tackles, hurries 29th, tackles 65. That is a wonderful floor, especially in DT required leagues. Again, John, I think you laid it out masterfully. It's all subjective, right? So, I mean, obviously DT required, the value changes much more significantly here, but even with a tackle floor of 65, this is in a sleeper platform where it's D-line. This is someone that can have that DL3 value for you, or that, someone who can be able to step up for you in the case of an injury or whatever. 7.1% missed tackle rate, his lowest of his NFL career. Some wonderful PFF grades, 84.4 defense, 77.9 in the pass rush, which was 12th among all defensive tackles, and a 7.8% pass rush pressure rate. And that's the one area that does leave some room for growth and a little bit of concern, right? Because a lot of leagues, we love having that upside for that big play, being able to get in there and make something happen on the pass rush side. But that's still above average. When you look at most defensive line across the NFL, a pass rush pressure rate usually rounds out about 5 to 6% on average. So still above average and trending in the right direction for all of his growth there. So, what I think I like even more about him is that in the NFL circles, when people talk about Derrick Brown, he's been perceived in a negative light, just because he was a first round pick, high, first half of the first round in the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. He's got the 5th year option coming up. This could be a contract year, it might not be. Got to see what happens there. So I think there's that negative connotation tied to him overall in NFL circles, that he is quote unquote maybe a slight bust, or maybe just coming out of that bust area. And with that, again, hey, that's how a manager might perceive him. Like, this is a guy that really just ain't doing anything for me, or someone's already cut him because he's had a first rough couple of years. In this 3rd year, he finally really stepped up. So I love the progression. I love the trajectory. Defensive line is a position that takes time to fully mature in the NFL as well. I mean, you go from being, 21 years old to the elite of your level, dominating people your age, to facing guys who've got 5-6 years of physical development still, as well as, all the coaching and experience that comes at the NFL level. So I really do think this is going to be another step up year for Derrick Brown. I love it. I'm buying him. That's my guy. Go get him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely into this one. I mean, anytime you can get in on like an ascending interior defensive lineman for a decent price, and I think you laid out the reasons perfectly why there could be a decent price even in like DT required leagues. There's a chance. I know the tackle numbers were high for him, so he's been productive in that sense. But like you said, the sack numbers haven't really been there. But he has like the metrics like you all laid out. They're there, right? And those are the things that we kind of look for, especially when we're looking at young defensive linemen who we want to see develop, and we want to see progress in that development. So even though the sack numbers weren't there, he was like you said, among the best in the league at disrupting the quarterback from that interior position. And that's what we're looking to turn into sacks over the long run. He's still just 25 years old. And you said it takes time for these guys. I know a lot of the times, like the peak when defensive linemen really get going is like year 26, 27. So it definitely takes time. It's not like they hit the ground running all the time. We talk about that all the time on this show. So people got to be patient. And when people aren't patient, that's your window to buy, right? So perfect pick there for the Panthers.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So who do you got as a sell in Carolina?
All right, so this one's going to feel a little spicy, especially with some of the things you see on fantasy Twitter right now. So even before the landing spots of some people here for the Panthers and free agency, I was on the sell Jeremy Chinn train, and for me, this boils down to not the fact that he's bad or he's descending, or get out a year early. Some of those types of narratives that you tend to hear when it comes with sell. I just think he has really high value, and I don't know that his value can go further up than it already is. And you look at some of the best ball drafts we've done. So he was going basically the late 4th round overall. So 408, 47, 410. I mean, that's pretty high value in these drafts for defensive backs. He was pretty consistently one of the top ones going off. And I just, what you can get in return for that, might be a lot nicer than really what he's going to deliver for you in the long run. So, again, you look at last year, played 11 out of 18 games. He had 69 tackles. Very nice. 6.2 games or 6.2 per game this year, 6.5 the last year, 7.8 in 2020. You did see that his missed tackle rate was up quite a bit at 13.8%. A lot of slot heavy focus utilization versus box focus from the first 2 years. So still very valuable, right? We talk about that sweet spot all the time, and the slot and box are combined together in that sense. But I mean, there's a definite difference in terms of that tackle production. Even if it doesn't seem, massive, you're talking maybe a couple percentage points when you look at the averages across the league. That's still enough over the course of a season that's going to make a difference for you in some matchups. So a little less value necessarily achieved there potentially by him. So again, just he's a high asset or a high valued asset. People like him. There's certain managers out there on the fantasy Twitter sphere who they're people I respect a ton, and they say this is going to increase Jeremy Chinn's value. He's going to be in that star role, and he's going to be at the nearer at the line consistently. I actually have some hesitancy. I didn't really see a ton of that from a Duke Ejiro or Ejiro Evofor. I'm saying that wrong, probably the Broncos defensive coordinator now, coordinator for the Panthers, but he loved running Jackson and Simmons deep and running that look like that. And we even saw Chinn utilized more like that at times last year than previous years too. So I have a greater fear that he's going to slip into more of that deeper role, especially with Von Bell coming in. And I think the best case is it's just a good rotation of them through and through. And then that really comes down to happenstance and luck, which is not something, we want to place bets on. So with him being viewed as a top 50 IDP asset, some of the strong defensive tackles that were going in the same range, right? Jeffrey Simmons or Christian Wilkins, or maybe some young upside guys like Azeez Ojulari and Chase Young who have dealt with injuries, but could be some really potential big sack number guys who've shown high pressure rates in the times that they have been on the field. So to me, like I said, it's just I'm maximizing on the value he has today, because I don't think the value tomorrow is going to be anything greater than it is right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And honestly, for me, like Chinn feels like one of the more like polarizing IDPs, because I do see like this is another example of that league to league and person to person type thing. Because I do get a lot of people who are low on Chinn, asking, why isn't he producing the way he is? Is it time to move on from him and stuff like that? And, again, it depends on the person, depends on the league. So I had to write up like top offseason targets for the safety position earlier this year. This was before the Von Bell thing. And because of getting so many questions about Chinn being low, especially in season 2, I wrote up Chinn as one of the buys for me because, again, it was before the Bell thing. So we still don't know how that'll play out. And before free agency, but people wanted, after Chinn's rookie year, I mean, people had him crowned as like the top guy, right? So I think that's where his price really was at the peak, right? And then we kind of saw it kind of go down a little bit the year after because people he didn't live up to that ridiculous hype, which is, it's kind of crazy to expect that every year from a safety. We kind of know that turnover is pretty high at the top of the safety scoring. And then last year as well, he dealt with some injuries and then didn't have as much production as well. So for me, he's always been one of the better tacklers at the position. That part, I think, is there. It's just the big plays weren't there from that first year, right? So those are the kind of more unstable things that we can expect to even out over time. And I kind of, we're looking at the defense as well. There was still a lot of cover 3 between Evero's system and I guess it was Phil Snow, who was the former coordinator for the Panthers. So it was a very similar look and in coverages that way. So there was an opportunity for Chinn to kind of play more in the box again, aside from the slot. And like you said, the slot is good, but now I think with Bell there, I think it does kind of muddy it a little bit. I think there'll be a bit more of a, like you say, maybe a rotation, maybe that role changes for him from snap to snap a little bit more as well. Maybe he's playing deep, maybe he's playing in the slot, maybe it's a little bit in the box. We'll see how they deploy them. We don't know yet. We can guess based on what Evero did previously, but we don't know for sure how much of that is actually going to transfer over to a new team and new personnel and stuff like that, right? But obviously, I'm all for selling defensive backs, safeties, whatever. It's absolutely I'm for selling them anytime you can. I did have to write up safeties though, so I had
unless they're named Derwin, right?
Like that's the only one. I mean, let's be honest. And now Kyle Hamilton. Do not sell Kyle Hamilton. He's number 2 for me now. But I mean that's the thing, right? People want these guys to live up to a rookie season. Hello, Jalen Petrie. I don't know how much of them are going to live up to that rookie season. There's a very good chance that they peaked in that year. So that's why I think it's just varying opinions on Jeremy Chinn. I like the call as a sell. I think you could make a case for him as a buy as well, but it just, again, depends on the league, depends on the manager. I think for me anyways, I think Chinn is one of those guys that is going to vary wildly from league to league and person to person.
No, I mean, you nailed it. And like I said, there's some people I respect a ton that I would in a moment tell you that they know way more about football and fantasy than myself. And they're on the buy train, right? And so I think that just goes to speak, like you said, it's so subjective. What we're doing at this time of year is we're just trying to take the data that we have, draw the best possible conclusions we can at this point, and we're making those guesses based on that, right? It's a lot of gambling and luck that does go into these things, right? But the goal here is try to give you guys as much as that data so that you can minimize that risk that you're taking, right? Because you feel like you've made the most educated decision possible. And I think that's what we've done. So, I mean, all that said, I'm definitely right and everyone else is wrong. So
absolutely. It's hard to disagree with you there. But no, you're right. That's what we're doing. That's what the off season's all about, right? It's all this prognostication that we have to do, and it is, and especially when it comes to buying and selling, it's like the stock market, right? We're just trying to kind of figure things out. It is a bit of a gamble, but a lot of it's going to pay off, and some of it's not. So we take those chances, and that's part of the game. That's part of fantasy. Obviously, nobody is going to be 100% right. So let's go on to the Atlanta Falcons, the next team in the NFC South here. I did not go crazy with my pick here. It's a pretty obvious one, I think, especially as far as reasoning goes. I went with linebacker Troy Anderson. Look, mostly very obvious as to why he's the guy to go get in Atlanta, although they did just sign Caden Ellis, so I did pick this one after or before the Caden Ellis signing, but second round pick last year. Obviously, the super athletic scores. He had the 10 RAS score, I believe it was. But again, Rashaan Evans, he led the Falcons in snaps last year, or linebackers in snaps last year, was like over 1,100, something like that. He's still a free agent. He's still out there. Micah Walker was also part of it. He started the year and got phased out in favor of Troy Anderson. So that really helped his value, and to show that Atlanta believed in him and wanted to give him a chance and work him into the rotation. He didn't have the most encouraging grades as a rookie, but not many rookies do. We talked about this, I think, in the first episode we did with redrafting the rookie class, but we can definitely forgive him, especially being from Montana State. That's a college that has a history of producing one of the most efficient and ultra productive linebackers, Mr. Alex Singleton. So Anderson definitely has a shot to be next in line with the great lineage that Kingleton has recently started. But ultimately, we want opportunity for linebackers in IDP, right? And Anderson, I think he's in a great spot to do so the next few years. And getting him now before that production really takes off, I think this coming season is a great opportunity to try to get in on one of those ascending linebackers. And if the Caden Ellis signing scared anybody off or, cooled his price in any kind of way, then there's another window as well. But I did have Troy Anderson on here before the Caden Ellis thing. I'm not too concerned about Caden Ellis eating into his time too much. So I still like Anderson.
Yeah, no, I love the take. I mean, I don't know. I got a soft spot for those guys who come in and they played other positions. I think he was a quarterback even before he was a linebacker, right? And so I don't just that high NFL IQ stuff, which is, I know it's super narrative-y, right? And I try not to dive into those things, but personally, when I'm playing fantasy football and I'm building out rosters, like I get a bit of a soft spot for guys like that. Like I just feel like that I latch onto them and they find a way to latch on in the NFL and make themselves very, very relevant. So no, I'm fully in on Troy Anderson. Let's ride. Let's make this happen. And yeah, if anything, I think Caden Ellis is just the death knell to Michael Walker, right? Like he had his time. Like they kept trying to make it a thing, and it wasn't. Like I don't know if you're a Mean Girls person at all, but like when they're like, quit trying to make fetch a thing. Like no one's gonna make Michael Walker a thing, at least not in Atlanta. So
right,
stop trying to make it a thing, and let's let the Ellison Anderson era begin.
Yeah. Ellis, he was exciting last year, right? I think he led all linebackers in sacks. I think he had seven. Or was tied for the league lead, whatever it was. But yeah, man, he was awesome. He was an exciting player. So it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him and Anderson together, assuming that's the duo. I think that's where we're with the betting favorite is going to be heading into the season as of right now. So yeah, go get some Troy Anderson in drafts or whatever you're doing, best ball trades, whatever it happens to be. And so myself for the Atlanta Falcons. So I went with Grady Jarrett. I don't love selling from the defensive tackle position because I think it pays to have like really good depth at that position, and stocking up on guys who are good pass rushers from that position is, I think, a better recipe for success. But I do think we're kind of nearing the end of that production for Jarrett. I liked him as a bounce back candidate last year. He did a nice job of that and bringing his value back up. So I think there's an opportunity there to fetch a decent return on Jarrett. I mean, the man's back has to be completely effed at this point from carrying that defensive line the past few seasons, because he's the only one actually making a difference there, despite Ian Rappaport's belief that Lorenzo Carter is great. It's been all Jarrett, and there's only so long we can bank on that as he enters his 30s. And again, maybe more of a gut feeling for me, because I think even though the metrics are solid for him, it just feels like we could see that drop off come for Grady Jarrett soon. So we'll see how much we should trust my gut on this one, I guess. But I think getting out on somebody like Grady Jarrett after a solid season a year before that drop off truly comes is a better window than waiting until it's too late, basically.
Yeah, I'm with you here as well. The biggest thing for me is that I don't see that Atlanta's done enough to turn this defense around significantly, or at least have significant gains in the next 2 years. That, you look at like Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, right? In even Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, like they didn't put up big numbers those last two for the Eagles, but they had so much talent there that, you know, you can be in a bit of that decline and you can still be a solid producer or even an over efficient producer. But that's because rising tide raises all ships, as we like to say. And Atlanta's not a place for that right now. This defense is in a complete rebuild. You know, they have some interesting pieces, you know, especially like in an Arnold Ebiketie and stuff that could really maybe start to deliver some value, but not enough that, you know, Grady Jarrett's going to be able to really maximize what he has. And so you're at a state of probably average production to worst case teetering off here, and getting out from under that is the right time. So, and you didn't slander Richie Grant. So again, I'm going to be okay with that because you love your Derwin James. I love me some Richie Grant. So
yeah, man. Yeah. I still love Richie Grant. I thought about putting him there, but you know, I was like, you know what? I still really like Richie Grant. I'm going to give him another year before I call him a sell. Oh man. All right, let's go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, home of Baker Mayfield. Who is your buy for the Bucs?
All right, going back to the defensive line spot here for me, I got Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. 3 names is always a plus, but even more so than that, I love some of the baseline foundations again here. We have 884 snaps for an edge, so 17th most in the NFL. Obviously not a Mad Max level of usage as we love him, someone hitting over 1,000 snaps from an edge position, but even sniffing 900, that's top end type usage right there. So, you know, a 10.7% pass rush pressure rate for me. Very wonderful. Again, when you like I talked about earlier, league average of all pass rushers along the defensive front settles around 5-ish%. So again, you're talking this guy is well above average in that. You know, but did he produce that into actual pressures? Not as much as we'd like to see. You know, we would like to see 7.3 sacks on an average of 48 pressures, which is what he got to. So, and he had 5, so he's a little lower, you know, in some of the metrics looking at it for me. 36 total tackles is a little light, but he did leave a little bit of meat on the bone. So it's concerning that he missed 10, but it's also, you know, he was in position to make 10 more as well is another way to look at that. So it's kind of a double-edged sword overall, but, you know, if he can go ahead and actually start to create some of those pressures into or converting those into the sacks that you'd expect at a league average rate, and continues to get that utilization, he's going to be someone that's a plug and play, you know, DL3 for you pretty easily, and possibly even more in some of those positive plus matchups. So, and the tackle floor, if he could sniff 50 tackles on a season, along with average, you know, sack conversion rates, again, that's someone that's very usable there. And after a lighter year, he's probably very, very cheap. So again, this is more of a buy on someone that is trending in the right directions in terms of that utilization for us. Probably buy relatively cheaply. And even though somehow they managed to bring back Lavonte David while in salary cap hell, I just don't see them doing much else to impact his position or the stranglehold he currently has on that edge in terms of getting almost 900 snaps this season. So I see strong utilization, and even just projecting average usage. I think this is a guy we can hopefully see in some of our lineups here in the coming season.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Is that, like you mentioned, it's buying him cheap, because I don't think people are overly excited about what he's done already in the NFL, especially as, you know, as a first round pick. I think, you know, expectations are relatively high, so he's been underwhelming in that regard. But man, he's gonna keep getting opportunity, because he's a first round pick, but also because, like you said, they don't have anybody. I think they re-signed Anthony Nelson is one of their options. Shaq Barrett coming back from injury. I still really like Shaq Barrett. I think he's a good player. I think he'll be solid again this year. But man, there's nobody. JPP was on the team last year or the year before, and he sucked. There's nobody really that that they could rely on. So they're going to put him out there for like 900 snaps again, like you said, assuming they don't go crazy, you know, in free agency, which, like you said, they don't really have the cap space to do it. Even though, as we know, cap is cap. It's not real, obviously, with the Lavonte David signing. So you take a shot on a guy like Tryon-Shoyinka for a cheap price. You're going to get the volume. At the very least, he should fall into production, like you said, and start to put up league average numbers. So I like the buy here.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, what would you say? Like, you could probably, I mean, I'm speculating a bit here, but you could probably pick him up for a 5th round pick maybe at this point, right? And I mean, what are you going to get for a 5th round pick? You're not likely to find that level of production or at least utilization. So, I think, like I said, it's worth a shot. Maybe not in a rebuilding type scenario, but most other rosters, yeah, I'm trying to add him where I can for that plug and play DL3, flex piece for it. So,
yeah. I like it. Who are you going to be selling from Tampa Bay?
So you can call me Warren Sapp here because I'm out on Devin White. So for those who maybe don't remember that narrative, Warren Sapp was not happy with Devin White's effort. I forget, it was a Thursday night game, I want to say, and he was just saying like they need to rip the C off of his jersey, right? Like he's not a captain anymore. So but I mean, Devin White is someone I've been in on since his time coming into the league. I loved the athleticism. I mean, he was one of those guys in that 40-yard dash against people like Tyreek Hill and others, right? As a middle linebacker. So, I mean, the guy is obviously hyper athletic for the NFL in general, but especially for a middle of a defense like that. He is in those blitzing pass rush upsides that he has is phenomenal. 21.5% pass rush pressure rate, one of the tops for, an off-ball linebacker, created 33 pressures, 6 sacks, a little bit above, some of the expectations you'd see in terms of comparing it to the overall NFL. But when you look at the rest of his game outside of that pass rush upside, it's really not so elite in my opinion, right? He's got a 14% missed tackle rate, a 36.7 run defense grade, 43.7 defense grade, 49 coverage grade. I mean, sure, those numbers are going up, but I mean, that's just like saying you're the shiniest turd in the bowl. It's really not that great of a compliment. I talked about Lavonte David maybe not coming back. And so really, what would he look like without another stalwart or capable veteran next to him? Lavonte's coming back. So maybe that helps stabilize that a little bit there. But he still looks like a risk on the field to me outside of that pass rush side of things. He's got the draft capital, right? You just hit on that beautifully with Tryon-Shoyinka. So I'm sure he still has a chance to be, fully utilized this year, and they'll utilize the talents that he does have. I think he's gonna fall into production, but those high upside seasons we saw in year 1 and year 2 are likely a thing of the past. So while he still has some of that namesake and some of that good smell left on him from those early year productions, again, I'm selling this value before we hit that drop off from what we see in terms of his NFL production, causing him to be a lesser utilized asset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an easy choice for me as well. I mean, people are going to pay, like you said, because he has that reputation as one of the best young linebackers in the league. He really hasn't been, like you said. He does make splash plays, but when those aren't there, and they really aren't all that often. I mean, he had 4 games with at least a half sack this year, and as many as 2 in a game. But that was just 4 games, right? So he played the entire season. He hasn't had an interception in 2 years. And he's also been super inefficient as a tackler. So I think the reputation of White is definitely misplaced. And I mean, I'd be happy to sell him to anyone willing to pay for him. Multiple seconds, a late first, offensive prospects, easy decision for me. I might move him down my dynasty ranks now that you got me all fired up about how misplaced that love for him has been. I mean, one thing, I will say, I think that reputation of his, however misguided it might be at the moment, will keep him around and playing a 3-down role for a long time in the NFL, especially as like a former top 10 pick. So don't sell him for nothing, but don't be so, precious about him that you won't take a strong offer for him either. He's a linebacker after all, and an inefficient one at that. So as much as we like Devin White as an exciting player, those handful of plays that he makes a year, you look at the entire scope of every single play that he makes, and that's where you get those poor grades and everything else that's going on with him. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'm happy to sell Devin White if somebody's going to come knocking.
Yeah, I mean, I sold Devin White last year with Damian Pierce and Brandon Ayuk, and in a contract league, and I used it to I think a pick as well, and I packaged it all up, and I got myself Stephon Diggs. I mean, it was like an expensive
Oh, nice.
contract,
Yeah.
but I mean, I used that to make a championship run, and it was great.
Yeah.
And the people, like I said, they were still in on Devin White. I think I sold him after one of those multi-sack games, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh yeah, dude can give you 20, 25 points in a week, right? And some people might like to live with that, right? That variance, but for me, that the variance he has is too great. Like I think you pointed out really well there. And I'll just say, any rookie linebackers named Devin, I mean, we're not really finding a lot of luck. Devin Bush, Devin White,
Man.
Devin Lloyd. I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, Adam. I think Adam loves himself some Devin Lloyd, but
Yeah, it's it wasn't a great first year, but we're holding out hope for Devin Lloyd, but we'll see what happens.
that's true. We're not selling yet.
The reputation of the Devons isn't strong right now. So, all right, let's go to our last team in the NFC South here, the New Orleans Saints. I went with a bye. I went with a linebacker again, and I went with Pete Werner. So I think there's a recency bias around the Saints linebackers. I think that's sure to play a part in this one, as everyone's still kind of buzzing from that Caden Ellis impact. Like you said, he led the position in sacks, and he had some great IDP performances while Werner was basically sidelined with an injury. Obviously, Ellis off to Atlanta, and while Demario Davis's restructured contract could make him hard to move on from as well, I think there's clearly going to be a significant role for Werner in 2023. And while he didn't have as strong a year as his rookie year, at least in terms of the grades, he was still a solid piece of the defense out there in the 12 games that he played. Look, he's a former second round pick. He was the most productive tackler on the Saints, again, in terms of tackles versus expected, which he's done both seasons in the league. I really love Werner, I think, as a long-term prospect, and he to me makes the most sense right now as New Orleans linebacker of the future, especially with Demario entering his late 50s. So I'm all for trying to get Pete Werner right now.
I love it. Yeah. I got distracted because the Denzel Perryman is visiting the Houston Texans tomorrow. So I may have spoken too soon about no signings. Yeah. Right. Son of a biscuit. So, no, but Pete Werner with Ellis out of there. I like Pete Werner. He was actually someone I was trying to buy a lot last offseason, before, even the Ellis stuff happened. But yeah, Werner's delivered on his value, I think. And I think it's a realistic value that he's had and held on to here this season. But yeah, obviously the assumed pending departure of Demario Davis in the very near future only strengthens the value that he has, or at least the potential short term, 2 to 3 year window of value for him overall. So I'm in with you here.
Nice. Yeah. And speaking of Demario Davis, I mean, when I go to the sell, I'm looking to sell Demario Davis. Obviously, the age makes him a tougher sell in dynasty leagues, but your targets to trade him to should be contending teams who need the depth. Davis is the kind of player I think that will attract those kinds of teams. He'll be attractive to them. He's also coming off a career high 6.5 sacks. He's been very reliable, playing over 1,000 snaps in each of the past 4 seasons. Doesn't really seem to get hurt with that old man strength either. So I love Demario as a player. The window, I think, to move on from him is definitely shrinking rapidly as he gets older. But the main reason I want to move on is not his age, but it's his production as a tackler. Similarly to Devin White, he's been incredibly poor over the last 2 years, and that's taking into account the snaps that he spent as a blitzer as well. You look at the tackles versus expected, he's been near the bottom of the league in each of the last 2 years. He was minus 26 in 2021, minus 47.3 this past year, which was the last place among all linebackers. So just barely cracking 100 tackles, I think, in 2022. Like I said, finished dead last in the tackles versus expected. For me, it's more the production floor for Davis when he isn't getting those sacks. It's just much lower than the typical every down linebacker. So if those sack numbers are propping him up in any kind of way, they might be just enough to kind of move him for a fair return at the moment to one of those contending teams. If you've been holding on to him, looking for a window, this is pretty much it for Demario Davis. There's not really a lot of value to sell on the Saints defense. So that's why I went with Demario Davis. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I love it. And if you're going to go out there and be the salesman to your league mates for it, right? Like regression to the mean is a huge narrative that happens in fantasy circles all the time. Just hey, yeah, it was a down year, but look, I mean, he's been able to do these other numbers in the past, right? And so this was just the down year. Now next year he should be closer to the average, and really sell them. Hopefully they're not listening to this as well, so that they know your ploys and your tactics. But just something you can go out there and try to use. So
yeah, that's all right. Nobody listens to this, so we're okay. We're safe. All right, let's go to our next division here. We got the NFC East, and we'll start with the New York Giants. Who are you buying over here from the Giants?
Oof. Well, I was buying Micah McFadden, but oh boy, did Josh's Bobby O come in and squash this real fast for us. I think it was day 2 of free agency. So I really liked what Micah McFadden had on his college tape a lot in terms of his pass rushing upside. A 92 pass rush grade, and was able to create a pressure on almost 26% of his college snaps. So just 2 years ago, playing as a senior for Indiana. So he had, again, the capability to really deliver in that space. And then paired with Wink Martindale or Don Martindale in New York with the Giants, that he is probably the most blitz happy coordinator that there is in the NFL today. I mean, it just made sense that, he would be able to find a way to do that. Now I get he had a chance last year and didn't take hold of it. I'm always willing to give rookies a second chance, especially their sophomore year. That first year into the league can always be a bit of a jump, especially when, they're playing through this very ambiguous situation with their linebacker room. So I was definitely in on him, post Bobby O situation here. Now I'm still willing to say, hey, if McFadden's someone that, everyone else is out on because Bobby O is there and he's the lead guy going forward, which makes sense. Maybe McFadden's out there on your waivers. And I think it's Kyle and Hollywood always talk about the price of a mouse click. You can go add this guy to your roster. Then, you're not even worried about trading him. Just maybe he's on waivers and he's worth a stash because a lot of teams still run that 2 linebacker look, and someone who has pass rush upside in a Don Wink Martindale system is worth holding if you have that extra room on your roster at this time. So if you're looking for that dart throw, I still think he's worth that at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not as valuable once Okereke signed, but I was 100% with you. I really liked the fit for McFadden in that defense. I wrote him up, I think it was as a rookie sleeper last year after the draft, because the fit was such a good one for him as like one of the most productive blitzers coming out of college, and basically the exact same things that you've already talked about. So yeah, it definitely kills him a little bit now, but like you said, you could get him for basically nothing at this point, so he's worth a shot. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. And who are you selling here?
Well, for me, I'm selling Xavier McKinney. Someone coming into the year I was actually really, really hyped on. He was a guy that we talk a lot about the green dot being, primarily for the middle linebackers. Coming into the year, Xavier McKinney was big talk about having that green dot, being the play caller there. Again, same thing with that. The looks on how Martindale likes to utilize his safeties. You look back even just 1 year before this last season in 2021, how he utilized Chuck Clark there and saw a lot of potential similarities for what he could do. However, that just didn't materialize. There was some, silly off the field stuff with, or maybe not so silly, but unfortunate, right? Like he was on a vacation and broke his hand in an ATV accident, I think it was. So, just a disappointing season overall, but he's still got some, cachet to his name. He was the 36th overall draft pick in 2020. He had nearly 45% sweet spot utilization for those who are, keyed in on those types of metrics and understanding things. So that, along with the fact that they actually have a very, very competent linebacker now in Bobby O there, we saw a lot of that stuff kind of maybe seep through and the need to play people like Julian Love and Xavier McKinney up closer. And, not that still won't exist to a point. I think that's just going to be a lesser realized opportunity for all safeties in the New York Giants this upcoming season. So with that, he's a sell. And obviously we always talk about if anyone's willing to buy a defensive back from you for, anything reasonable, you pretty much should be looking to accept that or consider those trades anyway. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's always somebody, right, who's interested in a guy, whether they liked him in college or they like the draft capital, they like the name. There's always a reason that you could sell somebody. I mean, I think I sold Xavier McKinney. I can't remember if it was last offseason. It must have been last offseason, but for a second. Anybody giving up a second for a safety, I don't know if there's that many people that are going to give that up, but he's definitely a sell in that case, but they're even less than that, obviously. Like we've already talked about, I'm all for selling DB safeties. So yeah, Xavier McKinney, absolutely. I am with it. Let us go to the Dallas Cowboys, the Zekeless Dallas Cowboys. And I am going to go with my buy here. I'm going with edge defender this time. It is DeMarcus Lawrence. Look, we've talked about selling old guys already. I'm now going to buy an older guy, especially if I'm a contending team. Every year that there just doesn't seem to be a more underappreciated edge to grab at a decent cost than D-Law. Led the position last year in tackles over expected, plus 20.1. He had 59 tackles on under 700 defensive snaps. One of the better tackle production floors for the position. He's also still a very good pass rusher, even at 30 years old. 6 sacks, it's a slight letdown, but still boasts some of the better pass rush metrics in the league. And as long as that's the case, he'll be a consistent threat to get those sacks. And honestly, he shouldn't cost all that much to acquire. I see DeMarcus Lawrence overlooked all the time in drafts. People will sell him in Dynasty if you're looking for a good defensive end depth for your roster. He really hasn't been very expensive the past few seasons. So going out trying to get a great DE2, like I said, or depth option for your dynasty roster, DeMarcus Lawrence is usually one of the first places I look to try and acquire.
No, that's great. I appreciate him as what he is, right? Like you said, he's an older pass rusher who's still found a way to be very, very relevant. But I'll always he'll be the bane of my existence, as I was in a very close matchup 2 years ago in the semifinals, and it came down to I had Micah Parsons, he had DeMarcus Lawrence and Dak Prescott, and that's when DeMarcus Lawrence, of all people, had a pick six returned on that Sunday night game in the semifinals of the playoffs. So, dang you, DeMarcus Lawrence. But it's a good call out. It's a good depth piece, and I probably gets forgotten about because Micah Parsons is the guy there, right? That most people recognize as the top pass rusher. So
yeah, for sure, man. Those are the things that stick with you, right? When when you have those losses like that, it's brutal. Like it's hard to forgive these players when things like that happen. But yeah, as far as my sell in Dallas, I had Donovan Wilson originally. I changed it up. It's not like the strongest change, but I had Donovan Wilson just because I thought if he were to go somewhere else in free agency, he wasn't necessarily guaranteed the same kind of usage that he would get last year in Dallas. Now that he's staying in Dallas, he's actually not a bad DB to try to target later on in drafts, who could be actually had fairly cheap now. So, but I did change it. I changed it to Leighton Vander Esch, is where I went. So 87 tackles last year, which is, it's decent. So really kind of unproductive with all things considered, playing time and everything like that. But also Dallas isn't a great defense for linebacker production. So I think, the hope for a Vander Esch was maybe that he would sign somewhere else in free agency, but staying in Dallas, I think just makes him a trade candidate for me. If you do have him, if people like him, he's a former first round pick. He's another one of those guys. There's name recognition there as well, playing for America's team. So, yeah, it again, not the strongest case. I had to switch it up here, going away from Donovan Wilson, but I just threw Leighton Vander Esch in there because I just don't love the production. I don't love what the Dallas linebackers produce, and I could go for any of those guys. Parsons is not a linebacker anymore, so he doesn't really count. But whoever that ends up being their starter there, it's most likely Vander Esch, but Damone Clark or whoever. Maybe Bobby Wagner. I don't know. There's been talks about him going to Dallas as well. So I wouldn't necessarily love that. I think Bobby Wagner would still be good, but again, not the best defense to produce, especially as he's getting older. And we've seen actually his efficiency numbers start to drop as well. So just something to consider.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm if they don't land Wagner, I feel like they'll make a move in the draft. I just that's where my gut is leading me right now. As far as the Cowboys go. So sure, Vander Esch could be a potential depth piece for sure, but I mean that value's only gonna, I think, take an even bigger dip here as this offseason moves on once we get past April and the draft stands as it is. So but it is cool. Did you ever know his nickname is the Wolf Hunter? I'd like.
Is that what it is? Why?
There's T-shirts like
No.
you can buy like Leighton Vander Esch Wolf Hunter T-shirts. So,
what the hell is that about?
I've never heard
that.
No, we learned it in our draft 2 years ago because we love to do the team names based on IDPers and stuff like that. And so
nice.
Yeah, someone was like Wolf Hunter. I was like, you're making that up. No one calls himself the Wolf Hunter, but
wow,
Leighton Vander Esch, he most certainly does.
It's a solid nickname, I guess. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Vander Esch. I don't know, man. Maybe he's not so much a trade candidate, but maybe one of those avoid candidates, right? When you're drafting and stuff like that. I don't think he's necessarily worth all that much in IDP. So. Anyways, we'll move on to the Washington Commanders here. Who do you got as a buy for Washington, Jake?
So I'm it's going to sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth here. I just talked about selling the defensive back, the DB, and you should be. I'm actually there's a couple of times I will buy, right? Again, sure. Subjective to the price, and that's going to be Darrick Forrest. So last year Washington had a wonderful trio of safeties and Forrest, Cam Curl, and Bobby McCain that saw the field a ton. Bobby McCain is out, and Darrick Forrest saw great utilization while Cam Curl was injured, and even when Curl and McCain were both back on the field full time. He, even from the deep safety role where he played the vast majority of his snaps, he was an above average tackler, a 9.4 efficiency to 8.7 average of safeties for 2022, which 1% may not seem like a lot, but over 1,000 snaps, that does add up. So it definitely does mean something. And just the fact that, he's able to be at above or around average is always something I like to see as a solid baseline number too. It's just not, something we're going to put all our eggs in that basket. It's just another indicator that, this guy can be something that delivers for us fairly consistently for IDP value. Obviously with the built-in variation that is a little bit more extreme for defensive backs, but now Bobby McCain is out in Washington. So that's going to open up, 404 slot snaps, almost 200 box snaps, and an additional 6 snaps along the defensive line based on how they ran things last year. And Jack Del Rio is returning from all indications. So, really, what could this be? That could be absorbed by maybe a true nickel corner if they brought someone in or had someone in house. They felt like, but even if just the 200 box snaps get rotated around between him and Curl, valuable snaps. So taking and showing what he's already been able to do and produce from the deep position, giving him some more valuable alignment snaps, and the fact that he's shown a penchant for strong tackling, an 80.8 PFF tackle grade with only 7% missed tackles last year. Again, I think he's someone that can be a consistent, starting defensive back or safety, depending on your platform. The one thing I wouldn't latch on too tightly to, and if someone's going to say, hey, he had 4 picks last year, like I can't let a playmaker like that go. That's a red flag, right? People are going to latch onto those statistics. That's not something you want to try to buy through. I mean, that's great to sell them, right? When Diggs has 11 picks again, you turn around and sell them to that manager, but don't try and bypass that because it's just not going to really end up well for you in most cases. And the fact that I don't want to say only 5 pass breakups, but with the lower number of pass breakups, 2 interceptions, generally pass breakups help us understand who is more likely to be in line to make the interception type plays for us. At only 5 pass breakups, 4 picks is an inflated number for sure, even though he did have that really fun one against the Eagles in that game where the the Commanders upset the Eagles on Monday night. So can be a playmaker, but again, I just like the floor that he brings even from a deep safety position. And I think he's got a chance to absorb some more valuable snaps here for the Commanders coming up this year.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I think he was great last season, like for all the reasons you laid out. And yeah, Bobby McCain being gone, I mean, he was easily one of the most like inefficient IDPs out there for somebody that would play 1,000 snaps and basically do nothing. Again, played a ton. So yeah, give me Darrick Forrest on the back end. Even if he's playing just the Bobby McCain deep role, or like you said, he's sharing a little bit of those slot snaps, whatever it happens to be. It's going to be hard to be as inefficient as what Bobby McCain was. So yeah, I'm interested at least in him, because he's at least somewhat interested in getting involved in the plays and helping out his IDP managers over Bobby hiding in deep center field McCain. So yeah, definitely for this one. I mean, yeah, like you said, we're not always going to sell ever. There's a couple defensive backs that we like. I mentioned Kyle Hamilton last episode. You got Darrick Forrest here. There's going to be a few that we like that we think we could get in at a good price, although Hamilton now is going to be way too expensive. But
goodbye Chuck Clark.
Yeah, that's it. That was the window. It's now closed. So yeah, man, I like Darrick Forrest here. But who are you selling? Who's your sell on Washington?
Well, Washington didn't sell on this man. In fact, they extended him to a very, very wonderful contract extension. That's Daron Payne. So he had a phenomenal year this last season. And you love to see that type of production from a defensive tackle coming into his prime. A lot of this, could say, hey, we're projecting forward. Like he's entering his prime. This is what he's set to do. But I think I love your work here, and my numbers totally match up to what you're looking at. That he clearly overproduced by a good margin this year, especially in the sack department and that pass rush from the interior. So, my numbers may be slightly different, but it tells the same exact story. And really, what that tells us is this is probably a peak for him, right? I mean, can it reach this again? Sure. Or is there potential for it to plateau? Sure. But I think the likely story here is that he's going to regress back to the average or the expectations that you'd expect to see. And even if that comes down to, a smaller number of, 6 or 7, still very solid for a D tackle required league, especially, with what he's able to do in terms of some other big plays that he's make, pass breakups. And, I think he even had a pick in that same Eagles game. I'm thinking of like just being able to be around the ball and things like that we generally really appreciate to see. I struggle to say that that's the expectation or the realistic outcomes moving forward. So, and again, that real life impact, hey, Daron Payne's in the news. He was franchise tag. He got the big contract. People can kind of get excited about those types of things. That just for me, that's an exact reason you want to sell him. And coupled with, I didn't really touch on the tackle expectations for him. So he really struggled in that part, right? 12 missed tackles, almost 20% missed tackle rate with a 29 tackle grade. So really living on that pass rush production, which was a significant, step over expectation. So it feels wrong saying sell a young D tackle in their prime, but this might be the best value you're going to get for him in some time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it's easy for people to hear, sell Daron Payne and kind of misinterpret what you mean by that too, right? So I had him as a sell as well when I wrote up my target avoids for defensive line a few weeks back. And you're right, he just got paid on a 4-year extension. He had a career year in terms of production, 11.5 sacks in 2022, which was just 2 less than all 4 years that he's played in the league combined to that point. So super, super productive outside of his norm. And look, you're selling at a high price. You're selling at his peak. You're not selling for cheap or anything like that. I still think he's maybe a top 10 defensive tackle in Dynasty, but there's value to be had there. There's that borderline where you can get younger players that could come up into that spot as well. So the pass rush metrics, they're good, but they're not great. So you talked about the sacks versus expectation. His total was the highest of any defensive tackle in 2022. And oftentimes if those metrics, those pass rush metrics don't make a jump, we'll see that significant regression with him. And I mean, hell, betting on any defensive tackle to not hit double-digit sacks again shouldn't really be a hot take. Chris Jones has only done it twice in his entire career, right? And he's he's somebody that has consistently posted elite pass rush metrics for the position. So I'm with you. Totally expecting that sack total to come back down closer to like his career norm of, like you said, 5 to 7, whatever it is. Still a very good defensive tackle, good one for Dynasty. But if you could move him for a top tier price, I think he's worth considering selling for sure.
Right. I got to jump in here. So I apologize. I get distracted when my sleeper notifications go off on my phone here. So I'm not involved in this trade, but we got an IDP trade, and I'd love to just throw it out there.
All right. Let's hear.
Greg Rousseau, and it's close to big 3 IDP scoring, for the 310 this year.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I mean, it's a pretty good edge class. But I really like Rousseau. I think he's a solid player. I think he's one that could be very good and he's already going into year 3, right? That's where you're buying a guy who's now had some development years and can start really hitting their peak. So I think, late 3rd for Gregory Rousseau. I think that's a solid return for sure.
I liked it too. I was trying to buy a lot of Rousseau shares this last off season. And I would say I was generally disappointed with what I was hoping for those expectations to be for him this last season, but it wasn't bad. And the fact with Von Miller probably still going to be on the shelf at the start of the year, like Rousseau should have plenty of opportunity to take advantage of that. And like you said, make that year 3 step up. So
for sure.
Sorry, I just love throwing it in there because
that's
great.
It, so that's fun. I like the live updates. My phone, I don't see any of this stuff, so I don't know where my phone is at the moment. All right, let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles. You know what I did? I put TJ Edwards as my buy here. TJ Edwards is no longer with the Philadelphia Eagles.
They should have listened to you.
They should have listened. I think bringing him back would have been the smart move. That's kind of like I wanted to kind of zig a little bit. I think everybody's going to put Nakobe Dean. I mean, I even put Nakobe Dean when I wrote up my linebacker targets last week, whatever it was. But I wanted to flip it, go TJ Edwards. I thought there was a chance that they'd bring him back. So whatever. He's in Chicago now. I think I still have a card for him. There he is. But man, super efficient. I really like TJ Edwards. I think he's a very good linebacker. He's shown that he can be productive. He's shown that he can be reliable. He doesn't really have any red flags. Going to a new team now, obviously that could change. We could see, any kind of struggles in a new system, but I think, he's shown that he is worth trusting. And I'm still very high on TJ Edwards. I would take a shot on him, but this is all moot. We're talking about the friggin' Eagles. This really screwed up my thing. I didn't even recognize that I had TJ Edwards. And so we'll say Nakobe Dean, even though now that's probably too late as well, because both Edwards and Kaiser White are gone. So there's another window closed. All right. Well, geez. All right. Let's go to the sell here for the Philadelphia Eagles. I went with safety again. Wow, shocker. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So he's still unsigned at the moment unless something came through while we were recording here. But he is currently a free agent, but there's a chance the Eagles bring him back. And I think people will be excited about that if they do. I think where most places where he lands, there's going to be some excitement after leading the league in interceptions last year, or tying for the league lead, whatever it was, with 6. So that's more than he had in his NFL career heading into this season, which is interesting. But he also posted the highest tackle total of his career while playing like a more typical safety role than in the past, when he was utilized as more of like a nickel corner in the Saints defense. Again, it's unclear whether or not the Eagles are going to bring back Chauncey or CJ, whatever the hell he goes by, CD Deuce. He's got every kind of name. I don't know. I can't keep track of them all. Gardner-Johnson. He's slated to hit the open market. He's out there right now. I think capitalizing on a player whose greatest asset from the year prior is one of the more unstable stats year to year, which is those interceptions. That's rarely going to be a bad move. You talked about it already earlier as well. We want to move these guys. If you didn't sell Trayvon Diggs last offseason, I mean, you were left holding the bag. He was not very good this year, right? So, we keep talking about it. Sell high on your DBs. To me, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, another strong candidate to capitalize on if he's sitting on your dynasty roster. Wait till he gets signed. I think there's still, wherever it ends up being, most likely Philadelphia, I feel like there's going to be some excitement. So I would move on from him as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think for the most part there, I struggle over his name. There's so many C's and J's and G's, and they all sound the same, and I get lost in it. So yeah, but yeah, for me it was the interceptions, right? Like loved what he did this year for IDP, but I can't buy interceptions, right? That's just not that's not in my bag of tricks, and I just don't think I ever will. So I would be in the same exact boat. I would be trying to move that for someone who's more comfortable or willing to take that ride, right? The highs and lows of it.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's what it's all about. Just try to capitalize on these big career years, and then sell it at the highest point that we can. So, all right, new division, not conference. The NFC North, the Green Bay Packers, who apparently are going to be without Aaron Rodgers. We didn't get any Aaron Rodgers talk in. Oh my God, the NFL
Here it is. Here it is. We made it.
Yeah, we're not doing it. We're not doing it, Jake. Oh man, who are you buying from the Packers here?
Well, as long as he's not on a trade list that he has to move over to the Jets, Quay Walker for the Packers is who I'm looking at. For a rookie year, I think he did everything just well enough outside of his specifically his run defense grade, which came in at a very, very poor 34.9. But really he was thrust into this lead role of this defense due to injury. Now, not saying that should be, giving someone a pass for their production, but I think there's definitely something to be said for coming in, even though he was on one of the best defenses in college football that we've seen in some time. It's a different level at the NFL. So, I'd like to see him take a nice year 2 leap. I do believe that's there, and definitely in the cards for him. He's been effective in the limited pass rush usages that he's had as well. So, he saw 66 opportunities and turned that into 12 pressures, 2 sacks, and 8 hurries. I mean, that's not, at the high level that you see from some of the better pass rushing off-ball linebackers, but it's definitely above average. And based on that upside, as well as the fact that the Packers clearly want to run him out there, 90 to 95% of the time, even with a healthy Devondre Campbell. He's clearly someone that's going to have value immediately this year. I think he takes that small step up. And then you look at, beyond that, Devondre Campbell's contract has a pretty clear out as early as 2024, even with some cap casualty there. But if that's the case, and he's obviously projecting the right way, or even maintaining, that should be someone who, again, he's going to be a strong, consistent volume guy for any LB spot on an IDP squad.
Yeah, I really like Quay Walker. I mean, he got the playing time last year. Obviously, when Campbell went down, that really helped. Those numbers helped him stay on the field and boost his production. But yeah, he's, again, we liked him coming out. I think, one of the things too is everybody kind of saw that ejection that he had in week 17, week 18, I guess it is.
18 against the Lions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is the last regular season game of the year. It's on prime time. Everybody's watching, and they saw him throw the fit in the hallway and, push a trainer and all that kind of stuff. So, there's all this negativity surrounding him and stuff. So there's that attached to him now a little bit as well. So there's little things like that, I think, that kind of help the Quay Walker movement. And yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's a very good player, and I think he'll continue to get better in the NFL. I like both their linebackers, but that's about as much of a segue that you're going to get from me. Who are you are selling here in Green Bay?
I'm just trying to get over that segue. That was elite.
Yeah, incredible.
That was amazing. So we just for all the reasons I talked about why Quay Walker is a buy. I mean, it's quite literally the other side of the coin. Devondre Campbell would be who I'm looking at selling here. He found a second life here in Green Bay, and it's been phenomenal for his NFL career, for the Packers, and for IDP. So it's been really, really cool. He did have his second lowest tackling career grade at 63.7. So, a little bit of a dip there, but still, solid productions overall. And it's something where I feel a little bit of a narrative-y, but kind of gut reaction. He's thrived on some of these big plays too, that really help him stand out in the IDP community at times. So I think this last year he had I think it was a fumble recovery for touchdown, a huge one, that like with a couple sacks or a sack and a half that like spiked a massive week, right? So I think of like how Joe Mixon had, was 12th in total running back points, but he scored a quarter of it in 1 week with his 55 performance, 55-point performance. I see some of that stuff sometimes from Devondre as well. I think back to 2021 when he had that big game against the Cincinnati Bengals where he had a pick six, or not, maybe it wasn't a pick six, but we had 2 picks in one game or something, one late in overtime. And anyways, I digress. He really makes these big impacts in that way. And again, some people love that, boom or bust mentality from a player. Again, maybe what I'm looking for in my linebacker position, but all that said, why I would buy Quay is exactly why I would sell Devondre. Again, you could probably ride him for a really good season yet this year, but sell him while he's still got that consistent name value and production value, because moving beyond that looks like to be Quay season moving forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And it's like we said, kind of with Grady, Jarrett, it's kind of getting out on these guys a year before, there's a significant drop off, or before there's really talk about him, being cut as a cap casualty or anything like that. So you eat a year to get a better return. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, I'm with it. I like it. I like Devondre Campbell, especially for redraft. But yeah, this is a dynasty focused conversation. So if you can move him now, then now's the time to do it. All right, let's go to the Detroit Lions. So as exciting as the Lions were in 2022, there aren't really many IDPs that I'm wanting to go out and actually acquire that are on that roster. But after talking about an expensive buy last episode with Myles Garrett, I wanted to put one more out there that I think will be worth the cost, and that's Aidan Hutchinson. 9.5 sacks as a rookie is obviously a very good number. I think that's going to make things tough for prospective buyers, but if you can make a push now, I think it'll be worth it in the long run. Obviously, he played a ton as a rookie, which helped his production. He played over 950 snaps. There's an argument to be made if you're a buyer that he could have actually been better, at least in terms of pressure rate and some of the other pass rush metrics. For people that are, looking at those kinds of numbers, there's a way to kind of sell him as this volume-based producer. It's not going to be the strongest of arguments, obviously. And a trade might be tough, but spending up, I think, in those startup drafts, for example, I think is going to be just fine right now, because he's going to continue to develop and get better. And if he keeps playing that many snaps while continuously improving his pass rush metrics, then his outlook is potentially sky high, right? So I really like Aidan Hutchinson. He's somebody that I'd be willing to pay up for, to try and acquire. And because it's the Lions. There's not a lot there, but man, Hutchinson looks really good.
I'm a big Hutch fan, so yeah, I'm fully on board with you. I tried to get as many shares as I could before, in rookie drafts, but I'm totally with you. The fact that he played as many snaps as he did, and they had some other effective pass rushers last season, in 2021. They had some. James Houston was one that came on late for him this year too in 2022. That it wasn't just he was literally the only option, so they had to just keep rolling him out there. He was just one of the best options that they have, and to deliver what he did as a rookie, like you said, I would definitely overpay. I did this last year, and in the spots where I couldn't get him even before the season started, and I think I'm all aboard the Hutch hype train. So sign me up. Tickets for 2, please. It'll be Coach John. Sorry, but we'll go. We'll get on this train together.
I like it. All right. Well, you mentioned my sell already, and that's James Houston, the other edge for the Detroit Lions. We pumped his tires pretty hard on the rookie redraft episode. I was pretty optimistic about his 2023 outlook, maybe potentially getting more snaps after posting a really ridiculous 8 sacks on 93 pass rush snaps. It's just absurd. Yes. There's absolutely a chance to sell high on him for anyone who is optimistic about that incredible rookie year. And look, I said it in the first episode, that sack rate is absolutely not sustainable. It's just not. Even with those strong pass rush metrics and optimism that he can be a solid edge option, which I think he can, I still view him as more of like a depth option and maybe, an edge 3 type at best if he can get that starting role. I think I have him as like edge 45, somewhere in the dynasty ranks right now. So with that in mind, and with uncertainty about what his role will exactly be, I think if anyone is in love with that production as a rookie, then you absolutely make the move to trade him to that person. I know not everyone is going to make their feelings that well known, but you know the people in your league best, and you know the guys that chase production and look at end of year totals, for example. So those are the folks that you're targeting here, basically, as prospective buyers.
No, I'm with you. I do like Houston. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of love on the redraft episode, and I think there is a case to be made for him, his trajectory to be very positive moving forward. But yeah, I mean, if someone wants to latch on to the production in sacks, definitely that's the person you want to sell this to. That's probably the same person who, like, on the opening day of baseball, when someone hits 3 home runs and they're like, oh, he's on pace for 400 home runs this year. Like, cool, thanks. Like, that's not helpful at all. So when someone's like, yeah, he had 8 sacks last year, like, I mean, that is, he produced. I mean, you can't take that away from him, but don't use that as an indication based on what we see here in terms of the numbers. So
for sure. Yeah, there's always people that look at just the end of year totals and stuff like that. There's pretty much one in every league. So you look at those guys, and those are the ones you're looking to sell them to. But let's go to Chicago. Who are you buying from the Bears?
All right. I swear this is my last defensive back. I'm just kidding. It's actually not. That's I'm so bad here. No, but I'm buying Kyler Gordon. And why I'm buying Kyler Gordon is I think that the cornerback position in IDP is much more relevant than people think at times. And this is even in, platforms like Sleeper, where they only have defensive back. They don't have true position, which I'll always advocate for true position for, get on that quick soapbox there. But, what slot cornerbacks and those cornerbacks who take the bulk of their snaps from the slot are able to produce. I don't think it's fully realized yet, or maybe not everyone's come around to it. Kenny Moore, I think, was a big name that really helped bring slot corner to prominence in IDP over the last few years. L'Jarius Sneed this last season. But it's just outside of the big names, we need to look and see that there's others there. And as a whole, they're just much more effective in terms of that production for IDP. So tackle efficiency on all cornerbacks across the board is about 7%. Not a great number, right? But when you look at those primarily slot aligned cornerbacks, or ones that take at least half their snaps from the slot, you see that number jump up to almost 12% in terms of tackle efficiency. And that's almost on par with what you see for linebackers. And when you think about that, hey, if we can find a guy who's going to be in that position, let's go ahead and take some shots on him, especially at a depressed value position like cornerback. So, and Chicago has Eberflus, who popularized or helped make famous the Kenny Moore truthers out there today. When we look at his time there with Eberflus, he had 41 pass rush snaps. Over that time, on average, 165 total, which allowed him to produce 11 sacks and 36 pressures. If Kyler Gordon continues to get that slot usage even at a half rate, and he can, be utilized in that same mold, which I think that his athleticism is what they're looking for someone in that spot. I think that's definitely in his realm of possibilities. So it is quite a bit of projection on my point, and scheme usage projection, but hey, it's the off season and we got nothing else to do but project here. So, yeah, I like what I see in Kyler Gordon, and I'm taking a shot on him for year 2.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm pretty high on Kyler Gordon as well. It's just as far as corners go, he's one of the higher ones in my dynasty rankings. I don't put too many in there, but he's definitely one that I like as well for all the reasons you mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, trading, I don't know what to give up for a corner. I don't typically trade for them, but if you're looking to draft corners, instead of going after Trayvon Diggs, for example, or James Bradbury, people are aware of the good corners in the league, the names and things like that. Get a Kyler Gordon instead. Go take that. People might not know who he is necessarily, but trust me, he'll be the better IDP option over some of these bigger named corners for sure.
Right. Yeah. And the biggest takeaway, like, even if you're not like, hey, I'm going to go buy these guys, just appreciate your slot cornerbacks, right? Public service announcement. They're people too.
That's right. All right. Let's go to your sell in Chicago. Who do you got?
All right. Well, I had to make a pivot here, and I got to say,
Sure.
John, I got to come up with something that we can disagree on. We're too agreeable here today.
I know it happens every once.
I don't know if it's the red beards or what, but we got to find something. So, so I'll just say this: past Jake, you did a wonderful job saying to sell Jack Sanborn on the show notes prior to free agency. So kudos to him. Past Jake's a really smart guy. But future Jake here, or present Jake, had to come up with something different because now everyone's clearly out on Jack Sanborn after the pickup of Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, your lovely TJ Edwards from Philadelphia. So for me, I'm actually willing to step in and say that was a great time to sell Tremaine Edmonds. He got the big splashy deal, 4 years, $72 million, and I think Adam really talked about this a bit in their free agency roundup podcast yesterday, that he's just never really been a splashy guy, right? He's just been an efficient tackler to above average tackler, but never really making those other big plays alongside of that to really boost himself, outside of that LB2 type range. But now that he's the lead guy, especially with another name attached to him, and TJ Edwards, that now's the time maybe to do that. And I look at last year when the secondary, I'll call him the secondary, maybe the weak side linebacker, where they really lined up more with Roquan and Jack Sanborn, while Nicholas Morrow was taking the primary interior snaps as the green dot. Those were the people who truly made the hay week in and week out. And I mean, Roquan's obviously Roquan, so maybe that's not fair to say that. But even when Sanborn came in, like, even with some of his poor PFF grades that he had, still found a way to just be the playmaker, right? And be in the position to do that stuff pretty consistently. So likely possible that's TJ Edwards again here. And Edmonds is again kind of in that moral role. And just that, I'm going to give you 8 tackles and then we'll move on. So some people are cool with that. Others maybe expect more because again, the contract and the name now, and we'll see what he turns into. But I in a quick pivot here, I'd say let's sell Edmonds here.
I like it. I mean, I think he's just earned himself the Tremid Edmet. No, but yeah, I like it. I mean, he's
trade me Evans.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'm with you. I think TJ Edwards could potentially be the more productive linebacker there for IDP, just because, like you said, Edmonds he's never really been that productive as a linebacker, despite playing every down in Buffalo, and maybe it's the defense there, but there's no guarantee. This isn't like one of the most overly efficient defenses either for linebackers, even though Roquan obviously and Jack Sanborn, but typically as far as looking at scheme and the type of coverages that they run, it's not necessarily the most friendly for linebackers is what I should say. But so yeah, there's definitely potential for more just kind of mid production for Tremaine Edmonds. And yeah, I think this is clear that we're starting to love TJ Edwards a little bit more. He's the man. We love TJ. All right, let's go to Minnesota. We have another bye here. So this is again, this was a little bit earlier. I put this in there, but Brian Asamoah, I had this written up before Eric Kendricks even got released, but so that obviously makes the window to acquire Asamoah that much smaller. There's still a chance, depending on the league, how much managers are paying attention to these things in March, for example. But there's also some uncertainty on how Minnesota, will address the position, if they can still bring someone in that causes Asamoah to take a back seat. Maybe, you don't know, in 2023. So it's not like he's a sky high buy right now and that it'll cost too much if you're into buying young linebackers. The team started to work Asamoah in late last year, and it was at the cost of Jordan Hicks, who is still on the team. as of now. And he, and Asamoah graded well. He didn't fall flat on his face as a rookie, which I think helps his case. But there's a good chance they'll utilize him as a starter in 2023. And that's all we're really looking for here if we're on him for this offseason. How much of a starting role and how productive he'll be under new defensive coordinator Brian Flores remains to be seen. It's not likely going to be the most, again, there's, a defense like this linebacker friendly system. It's not necessarily that for IDP. So just be sure to, you don't want to overpay for somebody like Asamoah. If you do want to get him, just buying low here is going to be the key if you can, whether it's in your league's free agency or a potential trade or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd have a whole ton to add to that at this point. I think you covered it all quite well there.
Perfect. All right. And then for my sell, I went, this is so stupid. I went Cam Bynum. So we're selling safety again. I didn't even realize I had this many safeties on here. It just shows you what I think of the position. But Cameron Bynum.
You're selling them. I'm buying them. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. There's perfect. Somebody out there that's willing to buy. But if you're a Cameron Bynum manager, I don't think there's going to be a better sell window than right now. He played the second most defensive snaps of any player in the league in 2022, and that really helped his overall production. But know that there's nothing special about that production when you're looking at the end of the year totals. He was the definition of a compiler last year. He did hit 88 tackles, something like that. But he finished 21 tackles below expected because of how many snaps he played. And he wasn't even average in efficiency for his role. So with 2022 first round pick Lewis Cine becoming more likely to see an uptick in snaps as well, the value I think continues to fall for Bynum. He doesn't have the name value to help him much, obviously. But Harrison Smith could potentially be released at some point as well. So people might get excited about, Cameron Bynum is going to be, a starter again. Trust me, you don't want to hold on to him. You can move him for anybody that thinks that Bynum is a good buy. That production is nothing special. Again, second most defensive snaps of any player in the league last year. He put those numbers together basically by default. So, yeah, that's basically what we're moving him for, and moving him to those people that look at those end of season totals.
It reminds me a lot of Xavier Woods. It was with the Vikings too, and I think 3 years ago, he led all defensive players in snaps. Played 100% of all snaps across all teams.
Didn't miss a single snap.
and right, but he was nothing special, right? So he was still a top option overall. But like you said, it was because he just was there to continue to pile up stats just purely based off opportunity. And oddly enough, it's the Vikings again. It's secondary safety again. And it's just the alignment feels eerily similar. And yeah, Woods is just another guy. So, I mean, that's what I think what we got here. So any value returned is better value than probably what you'll get long term.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go to our last division here, and that is the NFC West. Jake, the Arizona Cardinals. Who are you buying from this squad?
So for our YouTube fans, they're going to see that I'm probably clearly biased to this buy, and that would be one Zaven Collins. I got hung up on the wall over here. The jersey, not the actual man. That would be really awkward. But so Collins, a solid 1,000+ snaps over 16 games in his first full season as a starter, even though Steve Keim hoodwinked us all last year talking about how this is our guy, this is the guy we want calling plays, and then he played like 30 snaps in his rookie year. But this really is just truly he under-delivered and underwhelmed in a big way for a top 15, top 20 draft pick that he was 2 years ago. Even with 1,000+ snaps, did not cross 100 tackles. Had 18 missed tackles. And yeah, his value is going to be depressed, and for valid reasons. The one thing that I did like about Zaven coming out of Tulsa, right?
Tulsa, yeah.
Tulsa. Yeah. Thank you. Keep me honest. Thank you. I really loved the pass rush effectiveness that he had there from the edge. It was raw. It was more, out athleting people at times even, but you like that he was able to get out there and find ways to win other ways too at times instead of just that. And as such, this year towards the second half of the season, they really started to line him up along that defensive line and get him some opportunities there. Did not produce in a high level way, only 16 pressures and 2 sacks at a very, very average 12.6, pass rush pressure rate for linebackers or those off-ball linebackers. So again, not giving us things that we feel great about. But I'm buying what we've seen in terms of that film from college, right? Because rookie year, we really didn't get much. Last year was really that first year in the NFL in terms of a starter role. And he showed that he can be viable in coverage, right? He's a 70.1 coverage grade. That helps you understand that he's at least not a liability, which keeps him a very strong option as a 3-down linebacker. And, again, looking back at that pass rush in college, it was a solid 65.6. So it was, again, something where he showed he can do it. He's just got to kind of continue to grow. And maybe I'm buying the hype of Jonathan Gannon and all of his awkward hype videos as he meets his players. Yeah. But I think he's going to find a way to turn that awkwardness into some production here for Zaven Collins. This truly is the last year, though. I have faith in Collins. If he doesn't show me here, I'm probably going to be out, as most people should. And I might be a year late on this, right? Like, I'm probably the sucker buying up the Zaven Collins shares in these leagues where everyone else is selling. But I liked what I saw enough in college to believe that he's going to make the jump here. And I don't, just something about the way Vance Joseph and linebackers got utilized in Arizona. I feel like he didn't get the fair shake. So, yeah, give me some true Zaven season, ZVN SZN in 2023.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing, right? I think we're all guilty of thinking that, that was going to happen for him last year. He was going to get the starting role. Jordan Hicks was gone and whatever. But it didn't really happen. He was, like you said, very underwhelming, produced well below expected, had poor tackle efficiency. I realized my colors didn't change on the player card in his tackle efficiency, so that's going to drive me crazy. But anyways, he was super inefficient. I don't think he hit double digit tackles in a game even once last year, which is crazy for an every down linebacker. So really, really unproductive. I mean, look, the way to look at it is the best is yet to come. I think the Zaven season hasn't quite hit yet, but there's definitely a potential for it under a new defensive coordinator and another year in the league. So yeah, you're not buying him at a high right now. So there's definitely a decent window to still get in on Zaven Collins and then hope that he hits and produces better, which he should if he's playing an every down role. All right, let's go. Who do you got as a sell here? Oh, it's another one of those guys.
Yep, I'll balance out all my defensive backs buys with a sell this time. So I'm selling Jalen Thompson. Wonderful, 1,098 snaps, 109 tackles, played 17 games. So, really was able to maximize the time and the snaps that he did have. Only 4 missed tackles for a really strong 3.5% missed tackle rate. So, however, the 2021 version of Jalen Thompson, I think that got a lot of people excited and really drove up his value in IDP was the Jalen Thompson that somehow loved to live inside the sweet spot while our good friend Budda Baker was hanging out in the back half of the secondary. We saw a much more balanced approach to that this year between the two of them. In their snap alignment between Budda and Thompson. So I think that's very likely to be what we see here moving in with Nick Rollis coming in as defensive coordinator and Jonathan Gannon. What they did in Philadelphia with their safeties as well. We didn't see Gardner-Johnson or Marcus Epps or even Reed Blankenship when he came in. I mean, they didn't have excessive usage in the sweet spot. They like to kind of, I think cover 2 might have been their most utilized formation or alignment. I'd have to vet that number, but I want to say it is. And as such, we're probably looking at a situation where he'll be a solid volume play. But hey, if people still remember 2021 Jalen Thompson, let's get them excited about that. So I think the best for Jalen Thompson is in the past at this point.
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, necessarily like the best window to sell him was after last offseason, but there's
Yep.
still an opportunity, basically, like you're saying. There's a new defensive coordinator coming in. That there's going to be a shift in how the team runs their safeties as well. I'm glad you didn't choose Buda Baker, friend of the show. He would have been really upset and wrote in about that. But I'm with you. Jalen Thompson is he's the one to sell. I'm with you. I don't think, again, nothing special, but there are people that really like him. They're still really, like you said, hung up on that production. People remember those things, if they and they get attracted to them. So yeah, moving on from another safety here, basically, but we're going to make up for that in Seattle because I am buying a safety for the Seahawks. Yeah, look at this. Here we go.
Here it is.
Yeah, and that is Jamal Adams. And look, I get it. We're all very disappointed with the Jamal Adams output over the last 2 seasons. In 2021, he didn't get a single sack after hitting 9.5 the year prior. Then he missed 4 or 5 games, whatever it was. Then in 2022, he only played 15 snaps because of another injury. So obviously we hate that. We get mad. We growl at, things like that. It was, we look at him on our bench and on our injured reserve spot. You'll get the people saying he's injury prone and he's trash. Look, there's people that are going to want no part of Jamal Adams going forward. I think those are reasonable reactions for anybody that's had him rostered for the last 2 seasons. But that also creates the window of opportunity for somebody to come in and buy low and still potentially get the Jamal Adams production that we've been accustomed to before the injuries, and also why expectations of him were so high to begin with. His contract with the Seahawks, it's going to keep him there. It's going to keep him from going anywhere, basically. And as long as he's healthy, which, again, it could be a stretch, but as long as he's healthy, he's going to be on the field and he's going to be producing. Didn't hit the sacks in 2021. Regression, we warned about that offseason. Obviously, that overcorrected, basically, by giving him 0. So, he should still have his opportunities as a blitzer when he's on the field, and he's actually still an above average tackler for the position. And he'll have his role in the box more so than a lot of safeties in the league. He's just built for IDP production. We just need him to stay healthy. That's the key. He's still 27 years old. I think the last 2 years have made him a much easier player to target this offseason than some of the safeties coming off of big years, basically the Jalen Petries and Jaquan Briskers, right? So there's reason to like Jamal Adams for IDP still. It's just rolling the dice and hoping that he's healthy.
Yeah, it feels funny to just think he was a 6th overall pick to the Jets. Just
oh my God,
whatever that was 5-6 years ago, and yeah, he delivered such highs, and now after such disappointing lows, that with things like injuries, you can't really predict that. And I don't know. I feel like you look at Derwin James, like early in his career, he had some injury bugs that really, latched onto him. And heck, even the last couple of years, he's been injured at the end of the seasons. And it's I don't know. I just don't buy those narratives a whole ton. I'm not willing to, at least in most cases. So I love this. Yeah, give me all the Jamal Adams and inject it straight into my veins. I love a big 2023 for him.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like his price is just not going to be lower. Like it just kept dipping because of last year. And I mean, we're in a best ball right now. There's safeties coming off the board. I don't think people are considering Jamal Adams yet. He hasn't been taken. So
let's see, what am I up to pick next in this one?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Didn't think that all the way through. But yeah, look, players get injured though, right? That's part of the game. The fact that it came in consecutive years is going to frustrate managers a lot, and that was the same thing, exactly like you said with Derwin James. But we trust in the talent, we trust in what that usage it projects to be and what it can be for IDP. And I think Jamal Adams, profiles as a decent buy right now.
Yeah. So hilariously enough, you are on the clock in that, and Jamal Adams just went off the board to the young king Evan Renda.
Oh wow! So, look at that. That's good timing. I'm on the clock. Well, I'll pick after this. All right. So as far as sells go, in Seattle, I went with Darrell Taylor, edge defender there. arguably one of the biggest overachievers on the year. He managed 9.5 sacks on just 287 pass rush snaps. Obviously, not James Houston numbers, but pretty close. It put him a little over 5 sacks above expected. His 3.53% sack rate ranks inside the top 8 players at his position, but he's also the only player in that range who registered below average pressure rate at 10% and a below average win rate of 11.5% on the year. So yet to exceed a 50% defensive snap share in his NFL career. I think he should continue to be part of Seattle's defensive line rotation next season. So paying attention to those key underlying metrics and the lower snap totals, I think, are going to help IDP managers identify more regression candidates like Taylor than anything else. And there's multiple red flags there for him. So he qualifies as somebody to move on from while his 9.5 sacks create at least some kind of a market to benefit from.
Yeah, and I feel like in Seattle at this point in the draft buzz season that we're entering into now, especially with free agency kind of, coming, or we're still in the throes of it, but it's going to come to an end here pretty quick, at least the bulk of it, that Seattle is basically either they're going to take a quarterback to help grow and refine behind Geno Smith, or they're going to take one of these elite pass rushers, right? And so that's only going to minimize the further availability or opportunity for someone like a Taylor. So sure, maybe he could create another outlier season, but again, that's not something I'm willing to bet on. And if someone is, that's the league taco you're selling to right there. So
yeah, there you go. All right, let's do La Rams. Who do you got as a buy here?
Nice. I don't know why you got me geeking out on that one, the La Rams. So for me, this has a lot to do with just, again, pure opportunity. Sorry for so many defensive back buys. You guys are probably like, gross. Stop talking about him, Jake. We want real IDP players. Rush East is the one I'm looking at. So East and Quentin Lake were kind of the two names that were rookies last year that saw some very limited opportunities this last season. But at this point, Jordan Fuller is really the only other safety under contract for the La Rams moving into 2023 with any real viability outside of, again, the Rush East and Quentin Lake. So when you take a look at this very, very small sample size between the two of them, Russ projects as the most likely to be one who would be playing up in the box. And, that's really, again, where we want to find some of those high value snap alignment opportunities. And again, it's really just pure opportunity. And the Rams have done nothing so far in free agency up to this point to indicate that they're looking at bringing in more safeties. And in fact, if anything, they continue to shed salaries and players. Leonard Floyd was an unfortunate cap casualty earlier this week or end of last week. We saw Jalen Ramsey get traded. So I made the poor joke to Josh, he's no longer Jalen Rams E, he's Jalen Dolphins E. So there's your terrible dad pun for the night.
Love it.
Just need a little rim shot added in there. Evan can add that in post. But yeah, it's a pure volume play on someone who I'm going to say is darn near 100% available in most leagues on your waivers. You're not even trading for this guy. You're going and you're just putting in that free waiver claim, the $0 bid, and ride it out and see what draft and preseason bring us, and you might have 800,000-900,000 snap guy just because they're gonna put someone in there, and it's a good chance it's one of these guys.
Yeah. No, definitely. I like that. I like that call. You could get in on these guys for absolutely nothing. Like you said, there is a very high chance he's just available on the waiver wire. Similarly to like a Jonathan Owens last year, right? Nobody was in on Jonathan Owens, but the opportunity was there for him. You just pick him up. If you need a safety spot, he ended up being very effective as an IDP. There's no reason Russ East can't do something similar if he holds on to that job and dodges the obstacles of the offseason and ends up getting a starting role. So Russ East, Quentin Lake, whoever it ends up having to be, you take the shot on that guy. If he works out, great. If not, you drop him for nothing. It didn't cost you anything to begin with, right? So somebody who does cost something, who is your sell for the Rams here?
This is probably going to sound like blasphemy,
Oh, yeah.
but I think you at least have him off of the intro now, right? Because you got greats like Jalen Phillips in there. So I'm pretty sure he was on the season 2 intro screen. But this is Aaron Donald. So how can you sell Aaron Donald, right? Like this, like I said, blasphemy. 8 straight seasons of a 90 plus pass rush grade on PFF. I mean, getting rid of that I probably lost most of my cred, whatever little cred I did have in the IDP space. But when I look at it, he put up his lowest pass rush pressure rate of a 10% out of all of his seasons, including his rookie year, which is still a solid number. Again, we talked about 10 as kind of that or league average, but these are significant drop-offs from what we've seen from him overall. If you take and extrapolate out what he was able to do with the 400 snaps, pass rush snaps he had in the limited time over a 17 game season, that would have been 62 pressures. That would have been the second lowest total in his NFL career up to this point. And this is a guy who historically has been up near the hundreds mark in terms of pressures at times. Just insane production. The tackle floor was still on point. But the 5 sacks were really not on point. And again, looking at kind of the efficiency and extrapolating that out, these are all numbers that would have been some of the lowest in his career. Now, are they better than some other people that are out there? For sure. He's Aaron Donald. He is elite of the elite. I mean, he should be able to do that. However, the namesake still is going to carry that value, that cachet. You should take this opportunity to say, hey, I think we are seeing some of that dip in production, and the Rams aren't really showing a roster or a penchant towards building out that defense really well at this point either. Maybe they find some great value in the draft, but they don't have a lot of draft capital to do that either. This to me is it. This is the final window to sell Aaron Donald, in my opinion. Obviously, he's Aaron Donald. He could prove everyone wrong. He could put out some more sweet knife fighting videos and where he's like dodging all the stuff with his hands because he is Aaron friggin' Donald. Yeah. But to me, this is it. This is your last chance. He's trending downward based on what we saw last season. Get your return and don't be left holding the bag.
Somewhere in Bowling Green, Kentucky, Bobby just crashed his mower into a tree.
I know. They're going to cancel my invite to the draft at this point, or at least Bobby will.
Yeah. He's going to be waiting for you. He's going to run you over with that mower when he sees you. Look, I mean, I think you laid out some very good points there. I still love Aaron Donald. I want him on my team if I have him, right? It's just so hard to find that production at the defensive tackle position. And yeah, I mean, if you can still get a really good return for him, I just think he's such a rare talent. But I'm with you. I mean, look, you look at players that could have their production suppressed no matter how good they are. Aaron Donald is a key example of that. Nobody gets double and triple teamed more in the NFL than Aaron Donald. And that's a big reason we see those sack numbers come down and why they aren't like insane every single week. The guy could easily be getting a sack on every play if he's one-on-one, right? But the fact is he's not. He's got to beat 2-3 guys every single time. So that production does take a hit because of it. He's still dominant, even considering that. You look at the pass rush grade and win rate and stuff like that. It's still ridiculously impressive. But
fun hypothetical. Like, what would you think if Aaron Donald were to play like in a defensive line like Philadelphia or Washington, right, where they have that kind of investment alongside of it? Can you?
Oh man, it would be crazy. There's. Everybody's benefiting in that position. I mean, you look at guys like Leonard Floyd benefiting, Robert Quinn, like everybody that's played with him is a beneficiary of how dominant he is and how much attention he draws. You start putting like really, really strong options, like whether it's a Montez Sweat, like you said, or Chase Young, for example, in Washington, Jonathan Allen, whoever it happens to be. I mean, it could be massive production, but the fact is he's in LA where it's Michael Hecht and Greg Gaines and whoever the hell else they have over there. But it's I like the call as a sell. I'm one of those guys that's just going to hold him and ride him until he retires. But yeah, I get it for sure.
Yep.
All right, let's go to our final team here, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. I went with a buy of a linebacker called Fred Werner. So one thing I've noticed in recent years is that there are a lot of IDP managers that seem to have an irrational hatred toward Fred Warner because he's often touted as like one of the best linebackers in the league. And those same managers just can't seem to wrap their head around the fact that there's more to being a good football player than just interceptions or tackles for a loss, for example. So you need to be able to stick with offensive players in coverage, shed blocks from offensive linemen at the second level, take away running lanes for running backs, and for him specifically as one of the captains of that defense, get everyone in the right spot and lined up every play. And to me, that's Fred Warner. He does that better than a lot of the 90% of the linebackers in the league. And I get that that doesn't really help his IDP production necessarily, but it's about more than just tackles. And Fred Warner, who has averaged over 120 tackles every year that he's been in the league. And for dynasty purposes, we want the guys we know that can be reliable and productive for more than just one season. There are a lot of one season linebackers we can get. We'll find them every offseason. We'll find them in season every year. But for finding a linebacker to last for 3-4 years in the NFL, that's not as easy to do. I don't think there are many other linebackers to bet on as long-term starters, better than Warner. Basically, he's very good. So since he's entered the league, and these are the kind of things that I think matter for on-field value and for just dynasty value. But Warner in coverage has allowed just 0.83 yards per coverage snap, which is a top 12 number since 2018. He's allowed an open target on just 60% of his targets, which is also among the best in the league over that span. And he's fourth among linebackers who have been targeted at least that is fourth among linebackers who have been targeted at least 250 times over the past 5 years. So top tier numbers in coverage. This is a linebacker, again, keeping that in mind. He has a 10% forced incompletion rate, which is also top 3 since 2018. That gives him credit for not just pass breakups, but things like tight coverage, where the defender is credited with being the cause of the incompletion. So again, another thing that doesn't necessarily show up in the box score, but these are the things that matter in the NFL. 83 defensive stops against the pass since 2018, top 5 for his position. Again, that is any play that constitutes basically a win for the defense. And he's top 5 in run stops over that span as well. So top 10 in tackles for loss or no gain since entering the league. Look, all of this to say that he is absolutely one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Don't just look at box score stats or listen to jabronis that only quote box score stats, because these are simple-minded folks who can't wrap their heads around the entirety of the game. Fred Warner, very good at football and a great bet for long-term IDP production. So I'm much higher on him for dynasty than redraft, because I believe he is less replaceable in dynasty than he would be in a redraft league, for example. So I'm buying Fred Warner all day, every day.
Chef's kiss, Macri. Oh my goodness. Like I almost started to slow clap at one point during this. That was probably one of the best linebacker monologues I have ever heard. And I love the thing that you talk about right now. And I just, in my mind, I immediately picture like that player A versus player B comparison thing, right? Like, sure, I can go ahead and each season I could pick out maybe 10 linebackers or even, 12 or 14 linebackers that scored ahead of Fred Warner. But every one of those same exact seasons, he was the next one in that list. And he was the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, right? And there is 100% something to be said about a guy who you can, for 4, 5, 6 straight years, plug into your LB1, or even if you're so inclined, like you have to have something above that, he's your LB2. Like, you can do that every single week. And yeah, sure, maybe there's some down weeks because instead of getting 2 pass deflections, he just had such good coverage that there wasn't a window to throw into, right? Like that's part of the downside of being a talented NFL player, is that things like that can happen from the defensive side, because defense is reactionary. That's the nature of it in the NFL, in the game, and everything that we play. So they don't get to go out there and be like, well, that's Jamar Chase, so we're going to force feed him 15 targets today because that's how we can create our wins. Defense just has to go out there and take their assignment, play it, and try to win that matchup. And gosh darn it, if Fred Warner doesn't win his matchup almost, the vast majority of the time, and still deliver IDP value on top of that consistently for I don't know, 5 straight years. So
Yeah, exactly. Literally 5 straight years. He's been super, super consistent. So, yeah, man, I love those guys that we know are going to be around for a long time, especially for Dynasty. You're locked in at the position. You do
yes.
not have to worry about it if you're not one of those people that has to, want to do the research and try to find guys off the waiver wire in season, for example. But anyways, last player here. I promise this is going to be the last safety that I'll talk about selling on this show, mostly because it's the end of the episode. But as far as players who made a big name for themselves in 2022, Talanoa Hufanga was certainly among them, thanks to the Troy Polamalu comps and the splashy plays, especially earlier in the year when more fantasy managers are paying attention. And he did so on a top defense as well, right? So we did see those big plays come down a bit in the back half of the year. Not to say that they'll go away like they did, but more just to kind of highlight how unstable those plays tend to be, because Hufanga's role didn't really change much from the first half of the season to the second half of the year. He still saw 56% of snaps from a deep alignment and just around a quarter of the snaps in the box. So there's a misconception about him that I've noticed, that he's this box safety, but he's not really, and he isn't overly productive for IDP either. So coming in just slightly under expected, but as far as tackles go, but basically post the average for his role, which it's not a bad thing, but it's not nearly maybe as much as people think he's doing. So yeah, I think he'll be valued very high in Dynasty. And even though I like him as a Dynasty asset, if someone is willing to pay up for him or any defensive back, then I won't lose much sleep if I can get a return that I'm happy with in that moment, basically.
Yeah, he really burst onto the scene. I think in that first week he had a lot of big plays in the Monsoon Bowl. I think a lot of people have called it there against the Bears, right? Because where else would we line everyone else up when you have an unproven quarterback, in whether that, not even Joe Montana is going to be able to find a way to throw downfield. And so, and then I know he had a big splash play where he picked off like a screen against the Rams that he housed. And, he made a name for himself big time early on in the season, but I think the back half of the season is more indicative of what we should expect moving forward on the regular from him. And like you said, there's not bad production. It's just not this narrative or belief that maybe has been stirred up with some of the splashier plays that really drew him out onto the scene early on in the 2022 season.
Definitely. Well, that's it, man. We did it. We went through a big list. It's another big episode, right? Like, we cover a lot of players in these buy sell episodes, so they typically take a little bit longer. But man, concluding a whole list of buy sell candidates from around the NFL, hopefully gave people a lot of different things to consider as far as trading and free agency and Dynasty startups, however you want to look at it. We even got some topical free agency talk in there as well, as we try to catch up with the ever-changing landscape of IDP this offseason. So, Jake, this was a lot of fun. A massive thank you to you for joining me, helping me navigate this episode, and providing your excellent insight on all things IDP. I can't thank you enough, my man.
Nope, John, I'm happy to contribute to such a wonderful person and a wonderful show here. So no, thank you for having me. Look forward to hopefully some more opportunities here in the future, and looking forward to some more beautiful Derwin James plays this coming season too, as I have my own shares of him as well. So
you love to see it. Yes, sir. Derwin, always safety one, as we know. Again, thank you for coming on, and I'm sure we will be definitely podcasting together again at some point soon. So please, before you go, let the people know where they can find you and your work.
Absolutely. So in this exact feed we're in right now, the IDP show, I do some content work for them. I do the Start Sit article last year, filled in on some of the episodes for previews and such I guess ad hoc scenarios. But coming up in the 2023 season, myself and Evan Ronda will be doing the preview podcast, so you can hear us there, as well as over at Reality Sports Online. My personal favorite fantasy platform. I do a lot of their IDP contributions there as well. So check me out in both places and anywhere else. You can always find me on Twitter too. I love talking ball. Sometimes I don't shut up, as you can tell that we're over the 2-hour mark. So,
oh man, no, you do great work. Definitely go follow Jake and check out the stuff that he's putting out there, because he crushes it, and he knows his IDP, that's for sure. As for me, all of my work can be found on pff.com. We got a whole bunch of IDP content up there already this off season, with a lot more to come. I also just started a series that will help fantasy players kind of get to know this incoming rookie draft class from an analytics standpoint. So using key stable metrics that translate from college to the pros, and just started it today, actually, with running backs. Hello, Bijan. So that will continue with all positions, including IDPs, over the next few weeks. So that'll be a fun one. And speaking of rookies, next episode, I am joined by the great Joey the Tooth as we start doing our rookie previews at the edge position. So I hope you all join us for that as we dive deep into this IDP rookie class. So until next time, IDP out.